My name is Mia Carter, and for most of my life, I was the invisible child in a family that built its fortune on appearances. People who met us thought we were perfect. My father, Richard Carter, was the kind of man business magazines loved to photograph: silver hair, tailored tuxedos, whiskey voice, hand always resting on someone's shoulder like he owned not just the room, but the oxygen inside it. He built Carter Biotech from a warehouse operation into a billion-dollar pharmaceutical supplier. The kind of empire politicians shook hands with and reporters protected. My brother Ethan was his golden son. I was convenient. Useful when they needed someone smart enough to fix problems quietly. Disposable when they needed someone to blame. I learned early that in our family, love was performance-based. Ethan got celebrations. I got expectations. When I graduated top of my class from Wharton, my father shook my hand like I was a junior employee. When Ethan barely scraped through a business degree after crashing 2 luxury cars and disappearing through most of sophomore year, my father bought him a Rolex and called him a natural leader. You stop expecting fairness after a while. You stop hoping. What you don't stop doing is remembering. And that's important. Because revenge isn't born from one moment. It's built slowly. Like pressure behind a dam. The New Year's Eve party was held at my father's estate in Greenwich. 8 bedrooms. Imported marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking frozen water lit silver by moonlight. 140 guests. CEOs. Investors. Politicians. Wives in silk gowns pretending not to hate each other. I arrived wearing a black satin dress and diamonds my mother once told me were reserved for important women in the family. She'd died 3 years earlier. I wore them anyway. The orchestra was playing Sinatra near the grand staircase. Champagne glasses glittered beneath chandeliers worth more than most people's homes. Everywhere I looked, people were laughing too loudly, touching each other's elbows, performing wealth for one another. And through all of it, I could feel my father watching me. Not warmly. Carefully. Because for 14 months, I had been digging through the inside of Carter Biotech like a body buried beneath concrete. And I had found rot. Not rumors. Not accounting mistakes. Fraud. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Clinical trial manipulation. Payoffs routed through consulting firms that existed only on paper. At first I thought it was Ethan. God knows he was reckless enough. But the deeper I went, the uglier it became. Documents signed by executives. Approvals from legal. Transfers authorized by the chief of staff. And then finally, my father's signature. The first time I realized Richard Carter was directly involved, I physically got sick. I remember gripping the sink in my apartment bathroom at 2 in the morning while rain hammered my windows. My chest hurt so badly I thought I was having a heart attack. Because somewhere deep inside me, beneath all the resentment, there was still a daughter hoping her father wasn't a monster. That girl died in my bathroom that night. At 11:40 p.m., Ethan cornered me near the bar. "You look tense," he said, smirking into his whiskey. "I'm surrounded by predators. Hard to relax." He laughed like I was joking. Ethan always smelled expensive. Cedar cologne and arrogance. "You know Dad's announcing it tonight, right?" I stared at him. "Announcing what?" His smile widened slowly. Oh, he enjoyed this. The succession plan. The orchestra swelled behind us. Somewhere across the ballroom, guests were beginning the countdown. Energy early, louder voices, flushed faces, champagne refills. And suddenly I understood why my father kept staring at me. Ethan leaned closer. "You should try looking happy for me tonight." I felt something cold settle into my stomach. Not pain. Clarity. At 11:52 p.m., my father tapped a spoon against his champagne glass. The room hushed instantly. That's power, by the way. Not money. Silence. 140 people stopped talking because one man requested attention. My father stood near the staircase, tuxedo immaculate, smile polished for public consumption. Might I have everyone's attention? Soft laughter. Phones already lifting. People love witnessing dynasties. He began talking about legacy. Family. Hard work. The future of Carter Biotech. I barely heard him. Because I was looking around the room. At senators who took donations. At board members who signed documents without reading them. At executives whose bonuses came from poison numbers. Every single one smiling beneath golden light. Then my father turned toward Ethan. And after long consideration, I'd decided to officially name my son Ethan as successor to the company. Applause exploded. Thunderous. Performative. Ethan lowered his head modestly like royalty pretending humility. And then my father said the sentence that changed everything. The one who actually earned it. The room laughed softly. Not everyone. Just enough. Enough for humiliation to become physical. I remember hearing blood rushing inside my ears. I remember my fingertips going numb around my champagne glass. My father looked directly at me when he said it. Directly. The message was intentional. You were never enough. Then came the worst part. People looked away from me. You ever notice that? When humiliation happens publicly, people suddenly become fascinated with ceilings and drinks and tablecloths. Cowards outsource cruelty to silence. Ethan walked over and kissed my cheek. Don't make this ugly, he whispered. I smiled at him. Actually smiled. And that scared him. I could tell. Because Ethan had only ever seen me wounded. Never calm. At 11:58 p.m., I walked alone onto the rear terrace overlooking the water. The air was viciously cold. My breath curled white into darkness. Inside, through giant glass windows, I could see the party glowing gold and warm like a kingdom built on lies. I took my phone from my purse. Opened the draft folder. 14 months of evidence sat compressed into one scheduled package. Emails. Audio recordings. Bank transfers. Internal memos. Deleted compliance reports. Everything. Prepared for. The SEC. The Department of Justice. 3 investigative journalists. Every board member not directly implicated. I had rewritten that email 21 times. Not because I feared consequences. Because I understood them. Pressing send wouldn't just destroy my father. It would destroy my family name forever. And despite everything, that still hurt. Then I remembered my mother in hospice. Weak hands. Sunken face. Whispering to me while morphine blurred her words. Your father only loves people who reflect power back to him. At the time, I thought she was bitter. Now I knew she was apologizing. Inside, the countdown began. 10. The ballroom erupted. 9. Fireworks already bursting somewhere distant across the shoreline. 8. I looked down at my thumb hovering over send. 7. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. 6. This was the last moment I could still be his daughter. 5. After this, I became something else. 4. I thought about every meeting where I was interrupted. Every idea Ethan stole. Every insult disguised as toughening me up. 3. I thought about the patients affected by falsified reports. 2. I thought about my father raising his glass while standing on a mountain of corruption. 1. Midnight exploded. Fireworks cracked across the sky. The crowd screamed. Champagne sprayed. And I pressed send. For 11 minutes, nothing happened. That's the strange thing about revenge. Movies make you think it arrives instantly. Real revenge moves quietly at first. Like infection entering blood. I stood near the terrace doors watching guests kiss and laugh beneath crystal chandeliers. Then at 12:11 a.m., I saw Daniel Reeves, my father's chief of staff, receive a notification on his phone. Everything changed. I watched the color drain from his face. He opened the attachment. Scrolled. Stopped breathing for half a second. Then he looked directly at me through the crowd. And he knew. Oh God. That expression. Pure terror. He crossed the ballroom fast, weaving through laughing billionaires while trying not to run. He leaned into my father's ear. I saw my father smile dismissively at first. Then Daniel whispered more. My father's smile vanished. Completely. Like someone switched it off electrically. He grabbed the phone. Read. Scrolled once. Twice. Then looked at me. And in 52 years of life, I had never seen fear in Richard Carter's eyes until that exact moment. At 12:17 a.m., the orchestra stopped playing mid-song. Actually stopped. Violin bows freezing in the air. Conversations began collapsing into confused murmurs. My father barked something at Daniel. Ethan looked irritated more than concerned. Still clueless. Then phones started vibrating across the room. Board members. Executives. Legal counsel. One by one. Like dominoes. You could literally hear the atmosphere changing. Whispers spreading. Faces tightening. People stepping away from each other instinctively, as though guilt might be contagious. And then Ethan finally checked his own phone. I watched his expression crumble. He looked at my father. What the hell is this? My father didn't answer. Because at that exact moment, 2 FBI agents walked through the front entrance. The timing wasn't coincidence. I had planned that too. One of the agents asked calmly. Richard Carter? The room went silent. Utterly silent. No orchestra. No laughter. Just fireworks booming faintly outside while a dynasty began dying in public. My father tried to recover instantly. Men like him always do. This is obviously some misunderstanding. The agent interrupted him. We have warrants regarding financial misconduct and obstruction of federal investigations. Gasps broke across the ballroom. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered like a gunshot. And then Ethan turned toward me slowly. His face pale. You did this. Not a question. I walked toward him carefully across the marble floor. People moved aside without realizing it. Like water parting. And for the first time in my life, every eye in that room was on me. Not him. Me. Ethan grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. You destroyed this family. I leaned close enough to smell whiskey on his breath. No, I whispered. Dad did. Then I looked at my father. The great Richard Carter. Standing beneath chandeliers in front of investors, politicians, and federal agents. Humiliated. Exposed. Small. And suddenly I realized something devastating. He still wasn't angry about the crimes being uncovered. He was angry about losing control of the room. That was the moment I stopped loving him completely. The FBI escorted several executives into a private office while guests fled the estate like smoke. Some people avoided looking at me. Others stared with horrified fascination. But a few nodded slightly as they passed. Respect. Not for revenge. For courage. At 12:43 a.m., I went upstairs alone into my father's study. Dark wood. Leather chairs. The smell of cigars and old money. The room where he'd spent decades deciding who mattered. There was a framed family portrait on the desk. Me at 16. Ethan beside me. My mother seated between us. And my father standing behind everyone like ownership itself. I picked up the frame. Then turned it over. And finally saw what my mother had hidden there years ago. An envelope taped to the back. My hand shook opening it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Mia. If you're reading this, it means you finally saw him clearly. I'm sorry I stayed. I'm sorry I taught you survival instead of self-worth. But if the day ever comes when you must choose between protecting this family and protecting your soul, choose yourself. Love. Mom. I sat there in silence while fireworks faded outside. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel overlooked. I didn't feel underestimated. I didn't feel unwanted. I felt free.